All right. Hello, guys. We're going to go through the Unit 31 Employee Relations, and we're going through LO2 today. Just as a recap for yesterday, we went through what employee relationship is and basically how we, went through different kinds of economies in which how they handle employee relationships. And basically, just for you, Nandish, again, employee relationships is basically the relationship between the employer and the employee and how we can make it more positive from an HR perspective and have a balance between them. We went through different kinds of economy and how, they basically manage things differently. There was gig economy that I hope Ishika, you're clear about what it is now. And that is what we basically went in a nutshell yesterday. Today, on the other hand, we're going to go through how communication takes place in different types of organizations. So when they say communication, they mean not just communication between employees, but also communication between the employer and the employee, or basically the managers and the employee. So if you're looking at a business model, when you say employers, they would also mean, the managers in the organization, because people managers are the ones who report to the hierarchy in total. So they are in charge of taking care. So basically, if I have a team of, say, 6 people under me, I am their people manager. If anything goes wrong with any of them, it's my responsibility, right? So if someone's sick, obviously the hierarchy or the higher person is going to ask me, not ask them directly. They're going to ask me, okay, what happened to this person? Why has this person not been in the office for the last 10 days? I am answerable for everything that they do. If they make a mistake, I am answerable. So that is what people managers are. And that's why we also call them as employers. That's in a big organization, whereas in a smaller organization, a people manager would be basically the owner, or a family business basically would be the owner of that family business, right? So yeah, how, the flow of communication, how does it take place? What kind of relationship do you have between them? All of that matters a lot as well in employee relations. Quickly going through this. So basically, there are different kinds of perspectives of employee relations. And yesterday we spoke about different unions. So trade unions would essentially mean that if there's something going wrong in, I'm working for an MNC and my manager has been not treating me correctly, I feel that there's been a bias or it's been an unfair treatment on my manager's end, basically. So I have a trade union. So they are basically a body that have a set of people. They know all of the employment law rules. So if I feel that I was, I want to give an example. I was pregnant and my manager did not accommodate my flexible working request. Basically, I wanted to go to the hospital for an hour between my work time and come back. And I was ready to cover my hours or, not take a break and cover my hours. But I was told that that's not possible. So I felt that that was unfair treatment because want to put it the right way. So a pregnancy is not a disability, but my basically something going on in my life because of which I need some support and I didn't have that support. So I can raise the trade union and they will fight the case for me. There'll be a proper tribunal that will go on. It'll go to the court. There's properly cases done. So trade unions take care of that. And the same are for work councils, joint consultative committees, very similar to what trade unions are. They basically are a group of people who help in fighting the employee's case. So in terms of employee involvement and employee participation, so what the employee is thinking or, what are they asking for is very important because they are the ones who basically going to work in the organization. They are the ones bringing the revenues. So making sure that keeping your associates happy and also content is very important. So that's why we spoke about, in the unit before this, we spoke about surveys that we take. We have exit interviews, stay interviews that I gave examples about how it's going to be, useful. And again, we're going to talk about, how communication comes into place and how it influences the performance and engagement of the employees. Going to go through this now. Design the appropriate mechanisms for communicating and consulting with employees for different organizations. So there are different factors that are taken in place. There is the size, obviously, and which kind of industry. I always give a very simple example. If it's an IT industry, it's more serious, whereas if it's a marketing industry, they are more relaxed. They have different demographics and preferences. And then, every organization functions differently. As I mentioned, when I worked for a previous organization, in that organization, because the organization was so big, because of the size and the structure, we had so many departments, internal departments. And those internal departments were the one who was, we were only communicating amongst themselves. So I was in the HR department, for example. I only knew people in HR, and I felt that was a disadvantage because I am not just working for the HR department, right? I was an HRBP. I was assigned to, the IT department, for example. So I need to know more about that as well. I need to communicate with that department. So every organization functions differently. My friend worked for JP Morgan, and I felt that their, their communication style was so good because they just didn't have internal departments, but also cross-department events that took place. So they made sure that as, HR, what they did is they had this initiative wherein every month they had a cross-department meeting or a cross-department event. What they had is like, people from sales and marketing, for example, just giving an example, they came together and they had an event. In events, my friend used to tell me she used to have simple things, they used to go for mini golf sometimes, they used to go for bowling sometimes. It was so not formal, so that they can break that, little bubble that, all right, this is just work. This is not always work. You're also getting to know people. You're working with them. You're spending hours with them. In fact, you're spending more hours in the office than actually, at your house. So you need to know these people well, right? So I felt that was a very good initiative or an HR initiative that they used to do that helped to get to know people from different departments as well. Coming back to this now, consideration for organizational size and structure. Again, how the size makes a very important, impact in terms of how communication takes place. As I mentioned, larger organizations, they might have a more formal mechanism. Like I mentioned, when I was working, we were very formal. It was just between my department. I just knew people there. It wasn't that, okay, you're knowing different people. We did have, meetings in general, which was, it says town hall meetings, right? Exactly that. Town hall meetings took place. What town hall meetings was the CEO, or basically the head of the organization, is giving insights about what is happening. So, for example, they're like, this year or this month, there were monthly town hall meetings that took place actually. This month we achieved this target. This month we went up by this. So essentially what the CEO is doing is giving a positive outlook to its associates and motivating them. In my previous company's case, the town hall meeting took place via Teams. So again, we never knew anyone. We never spoke to anyone. Most of our cameras were shut. Only the CEO who was there, whose camera was on, right? Whereas in small organizations, they would just, probably have a team meeting and call it a day. And they can also have weekly team meetings. Maybe in a large organization, internal departments have team meetings weekly, but as an overall, they have town hall meetings. I have an example actually. In one of the town hall meetings that I have attended, what they did was they said that we're going to give insights, and they were making changes to many, from basically they were changing the entire organization's working style in terms of, first, it was very relaxed, and you can have flexibility, you can work from home. You want to work from home 3 days a week, fair enough. 4 days a week, fair enough. that was the approach that was there in the organization. That was one of the reasons I also left 2 years ago, actually. And after that, after COVID, what they were trying to do is they were like, no, everyone has to come into work. Everyone needs to come into 4 days minimum. And, probably Friday is the only day that you can work from home. That is what they were trying to do. And we had this town hall meeting wherein everyone, on Teams, you can also put messages as an anonymous person. You don't need to put your name in every time. So when it's a group, such a big group, like almost 5,000 people in the team meeting, you can be anonymous and put chats. And there were so many chats coming up as an anonymous person saying absolutely unfair, not considering your, young mothers, not considering people who are sick, not considering family people. So that's how the CEO understood that this was basically not the correct approach, or basically it was too quick to put that reform in place. Maybe if, he would have tried to do it 2 years later, people would have been like, what, every other company is doing it, we have to do it, we don't have a choice. But back then, people had so much choice that they were like, what, if you're not agreeing, I can find 10 other people who will agree and want me. That was what the idea of associates in the organization went then. Whereas again, yeah, if it's a small organization, smaller size, very easier, I would feel, because it's easier to communicate. Again, it can get quite mundane, basically doing the same thing every time, every week. You might not really have updates. You'll be like, I literally did the same thing last week, what I did this week. So it needs to see if it's going to be useful or not if you're having so many meetings. Then again, we spoke about the industry and sector. Every different industry and sector has a different communication style and has a different method of communication, essentially. And it says about healthcare organizations and tech companies. I gave you an example of marketing and tech. So that it's a relaxed environment over there, whereas tech might have a more, they need to get the tasks done. They're continuously working on the computers. They have proper feedback sessions because they can be graded properly on their work. Whereas marketing is more about ideas. So it's very difficult for you to judge people based just on that. If you have any questions, guys, you can please stop me immediately and I'll be happy to answer them, by the way. Then going through employee demographics and preferences. So we're going to go through how, every employee works differently. So, and also region matters as well, right? People in the UK might work differently compared to people in the US. There's employees working differently everywhere. There's culture comes into place. There's so many things come into place. And how there has been a proper mix of digital and face-to-face communication for a diverse workforce. So someone working in the UK is trying to contact someone working in, say, Nigeria or Africa. So how that digital communication works, whereas what's the difference when they come face-to-face as well. So we'll talk about that. Going on with the mechanisms for communication and consultation. So firstly, we talk about traditional methods. Traditional methods essentially would be proper, team meetings, face-to-face team meetings, not Teams meetings. You have suggestion box and bulletin boards. So pretty self-explanatory. Suggestion box are always there around. You can put in whatever you feel anonymously. You have boards wherein, you can say like how you want to talk or how you want to communicate or what's, good. Like, I feel that there is Christmas coming up. We should have a secret Santa done. So maybe I put that idea on a board or a suggestion box. So that was a traditional method of doing things. Essentially, I don't think that suggestion box and boards, everything goes around a lot nowadays. There are organizations who still obviously take care or use that. I would say smaller or family-owned businesses are the ones that actually use that the most. But I would say it's really traditional. But yeah. And benefits in terms of familiarity and inclusivity, but also limitations in reaching remote or globally dispersed teams. So it's beneficial because, yeah, you're talking face to face, you're doing everything, the traditional way. But in terms of their limitations, it says reaching remote or globally dispersed teams. Of course, you obviously can't have a proper face-to-face meeting with someone based in the UK when you're in India, right? So that's obviously a limitation there. So when it comes to MNCs or organizations that function on a global scale, this might not essentially work. Wherein an organization or a small business that, have employees coming in every day and working from the office instead of working from home, traditional methods would definitely work. Then we're moving on to digital channels, basically what we're using the most. I would say you have online surveys, you have emails. There are different ways through which you can get data from associates and, just communicate freely with associates, which makes things so much easier in this world, basically now the modern world. And I spoke about some surveys basically in the last unit. So there was this thing called interviews that we used to take, which was exit interviews or stay interviews. If the employee has been in the organization for more than 6 months, there was a stay interview that took place. Basically, you're asking them that, are they happy with everything? Are they satisfied? Do they think their manager is giving them enough support? How would they say that, things can be improved? So some people would say that maybe the IT department needs to do a better job because every day I have an issue with my computer system. There was these little feedbacks that helped to get a very big overall impact, because maybe I have 10 people telling me that, they suffer from IT issues. We would reflect that back on the IT department and give them feedback in terms of, what, maybe you need to hire better staff. Maybe you need to change your process. The process is too long. If people have an issue, they need to wait for half an hour on the call for getting help. So in an MNC, that's how it works, right? You have an issue, you call the IT department, you're waiting on the call with them, that you're telling them this is your issue. They're gonna probably, go internally and change that for you. But it's a long process. So how we can make that more helpful for our associates? So that's how surveys, internal surveys, play a very important role. Whereas you can also have external surveys as well, and exit surveys. So, why is an associate leaving? How can, as a company, we can do better to reduce the turnover rate, and how we can stop that associate from moving on to a different company. So these are ways in which communication really helps. And also in today's world, I would say that cybersecurity is so important. MNCs, especially, the likelihood of them getting, hacked is more compared to, like, obviously it's the same for small organizations and MNCs, but I would say them having to safeguard their associates is way more important, because there are 3,000-4,000 people working just probably in the US, then 3,000-4,000 in the UK. How do you explain so many people that when you get a suspicious email, you're not supposed to click it? How is that something that they can do? Because, for example, if it was a fintech company, for example, okay, they deal with sensitive customer data, they deal with bank transactions of customers, all of the customer card numbers. How do you explain so many associates that you need to make sure that it's your responsibility that if there's a suspicious email, you don't click on it, because there's a virus that can enter your laptop system and can take the data. So I read this somewhere. There was a company that used to send these emails that was fake emails, basically, that said, you're getting a delivery at this time from, say DHL, click on this link to approve. And if associates felt that it was suspicious, they had to go and send it to the IT department as a suspicious email. They had an option to do that. If they did that, they used to get some brownie points. Basically, they used to get some extra, some extra points, essentially, that, okay, you did a good job because you recognize this was a fraud email. Whereas employees used to click on the link, they used to be taken to a page that used to say that you've been phished. Phished is PHISHED. what it essentially means is that you've been hacked or you've been targeted. So that was one of the, one of the ways in which you can train your associates as well. Then open door policies. So I feel open door policies are so important because it just, as an associate or as someone who's just recently joined the company, who's at the lower level of the hierarchy, if you have an open door policy with someone in the high level, it makes things so much easier, because you feel a sense of safety, because you're like, okay, if something goes wrong, there is, the leader I can go and talk to. I can book a meeting with him and he is probably going to be available for me. So having an open door policy is so important. And I also feel that the plan or the layout plan, this might actually be like, this is the most silliest thing ever, but when you have an office that has the higher or the leaders sitting in closed, proper rooms, they have a separate space for themselves. You probably can never see them because they're inside their rooms. So when you walk past the room, you can't really see who's sitting inside or not. Whereas if you have an organization that has each desk laid out the same way, so you have your leader sitting across you, probably working on his laptop, and you're like, you know what? It doesn't seem so scary. I can just go and book a meeting with him and have a talk with him. And I felt that this was something that when I've worked for both kinds of organizations, one in which, all of them were sitting properly in their little offices in their rooms. Nobody really knew how they even looked like, probably. Whereas the other one was a proper layout. Everyone had a same kind of desk. There was no discrimination in terms of, if you're, a leader, there is anyways discrimination in terms of pay, right? So it's better to just keep an open layout. So I felt that helped me personally, that, if I were to have a talk with someone that's 2 levels above me, I was like, you know what, doesn't matter. Literally, they sit beside me, might as well book a meeting and have a chat. So one of the, a little silly example, basically. But yeah, open door policies are important basically for communication and helping the associates for transparent communication. So going on the feedback mechanisms, I spoke about employee surveys already, how we can get feedback from them so that we can make sure that the associates are satisfied in the end. Then you have suggestion programs wherein they give different ideas. So if I suggested I want to have Secret Santa this Christmas and my idea was taken on board, that would make me feel, so proud. I say, you know what, actually, wow, I'm so happy about this. I'm talking to different associates. There's a Secret Santa in place. We're going for a Christmas lunch or dinner. Or probably if there's an organization that doesn't celebrate Diwali or Eid, we can put in a suggestion that, this is our culture and we have probably 200, 300 associates coming in from this culture. Maybe we can do something like that. So literally a suggestion program is something. Before there were suggestion boxes. Now they have these anonymous surveys. So if there's a town hall meeting that's taking place, they put in these little chat boxes in the middle of the meetings that, okay, guys, I have a question for you. What would you suggest we can change or what we can do differently? And then at the end, after everyone's done giving their answers, you probably have 15, 20 seconds to answer it. There's a page that says all of the words, that have been put up. So that's one of the way that suggestions are now taken. Then whistleblower hotlines. So what is whistleblower hotlines? First of all, you guys must be, what is a whistleblower, right? So I feel, in my head, a whistleblower is basically just a service that helps employees report all of the unethical or unlawful practices that are taking place and malpractices that are taking place in the organization. For example, legally or as per the employer laws, a young mother, basically someone who's going on maternity leave, by law should get in the UK 9 months of maternity leave, paid maternity leave. So the first 6 months is their full pay, and after 6 months, it drops down to 75% of their pay. But there's this organization that is saying that, no, we're not going to pay you your full pay because you're not really working, you're at home taking care of your child. We probably just pay you 50% of your pay for the entire year that you're off, or the entire 9 months that you're off. Lawfully, that is incorrect. So it would be unlawful, essentially, of the organization to do that. But because employees are so scared that, you know what, my job is at stake, who is like, if they remove me for the next 9 months, I'm not going to be paid anything, right? So they don't say anything or answer back. Also, lawfully, you can't get rid of someone who has mentioned or told you that they're pregnant, because that will be discriminatory. Because if, I am 4-5 months pregnant and I told my manager that I'm pregnant now, I'm gonna, my due date is probably in the next 4 months, this is how it's gonna go, blah blah blah, and he removes ways to get me out of the organization, I can basically go to the trade unions or the employment law organization and be like, this is unlawful, because he knew that I was pregnant, he knew that I was going to go on maternity leave soon, and that is why he did this, and he found a replacement. So that's one of an example. So they can call these hotlines or these organizations that take place of that, and they essentially, once it's reported, then it gets as a big case. There's an investigation that takes place. There are people coming in and asking so many questions, and not just the organization's reputation, but also the organization as a whole is then at risk, because if this has happened once, we don't know how many other times it has happened. Or because there was one associate that had the guts to actually call and report it, there might be 10 others who'd be like, you know what, this has happened with me as well. I've gone through some misconduct myself as well. So that's why it's so important that organizations follow all of the laws and are basically ethically correct in all of their working styles. Now, how they can tailor mechanisms to the organization's culture. Aligning with organization values. Obviously, every organization has different values, and they function differently. A small business organization might have someone who is they might have set of things in place already. Like if you join an MNC, they have these rules and these processes already in place, and there's a way in which they function. There might be, like I mentioned, again, coming back, IT department really strict, really on the job, get your tasks done, this is how you're graded. Whereas marketing, probably a relaxed organization. So that's how the culture matters a lot as well. And culture internally matters, obviously communication, but also how their approach to different working styles are. So I feel that in a relaxed organization, your associates are more committed to your organization, because they're like, you know what, I feel happy when I go into work. I get a sense of belongingness when I go into work, because, I know people, I feel like, they value my time. So I want to do better. Okay. Whereas an organization wherein all of, your associates are like a dictatorship kind of rule, wherein everyone's actually scared to even say anything. When you go into work, you feel like, you know what, this is just, it's just stress. It's nothing. I don't feel happy when I'm coming into work. In fact, I actually feel sad because, the environment in which I'm working in. So that it impacts not just communication, but also how associates or how employees would essentially give output back. So in a dictatorship kind of organization, they might be like, I don't even feel like giving fresh ideas, because whenever I give a fresh idea, probably my idea is never taken on board, or I'm probably mocked to even give a different idea or a different, way to work. So yeah, the organization's values are really important. Then you need to have a two-way communication, wherein if, I had a manager, what essentially happened was that whenever anyone tried to talk to him, what he always did was whatever our ideas or suggestions were, he ignored them and started telling his own ideas and suggestions. And in our head, we were like, we're trying to talk to you as a two-way kind of feel. I'm trying to ask for your feedback on what you think about, if I want to make some changes to this process, what do you think about it? Instead of leaving my idea and being like, okay, that's absolutely fine, but I think this would work better and this is how you should do it. Fair enough. There are people managers who have their set of, working styles and working properly. But when it doesn't, when it's not a two-way street, then it's going to just be like, you're just telling me what to do. I am just sticking to whatever you're giving me or task you're assigning me, but I'm not thinking outside the box. So, there should be a culture of open and two-way communication so that, while making decisions, you engage with your associates as well. So they feel that, what, my opinion actually mattered, in it might be the smallest decision, but, my opinion actually mattered. Then implementing feedback loops. So how feedback helps in continuous improvement of the organization is so important. You might have associates coming in, you have monthly surveys with them or 6 monthly surveys with them, and trying to explain them that, this is how the working style looks like, this is how it's going to go. But, there might be an employee saying that we always have meetings just on Teams. Like we might be sitting probably 2 blocks. So it's a big building, for example, and you're like, we probably are sitting like few desks away, but we're still having a Teams meeting. Why is that? Why can't we actually engage in face-to-face meetings? So this is one of the things that started after COVID, that even though you're in the office, people are like, what, it's easier to just sit on my desk, have a Teams meeting and get it done with, even though they're sitting in the office, right? So that might be one of the suggestion of feedback that an associate is giving, and organizations are taking that into place. So there's continuous improvement every single time. And because of change in circumstances, there is obviously change in how the organization adapts to different processes as well. Then monitoring and evaluation. So again, for the organization to function correctly and for a smooth flow of organizations, there has to be regular monitoring of associates. So you obviously can't just leave your associates. That's why you assign managers, for taking care of people managers, essentially. So each manager might have 6, 7, 10 associates max, or 15 maximum under them. So what they're doing is they're continuously checking up. And then if that manager is managing 10 people, that manager might be reporting to someone above in the hierarchy. And that person above in the hierarchy might have 10 such managers under them, telling them about the 100 employees under those 10 managers. Did I confuse you all? 10 people under one manager, then that manager is reporting to another one up, who has, again, 10 managers under them. So that's how 100 employees are being checked on. Anyways, the regular monitoring of how they're doing work, if they have any problems, if the managers need support. Sometimes people managers, are like, what, I genuinely don't know how to approach this problem. There might be, a dispute between 2 associates on, I had one in my organization. I'll share this. So the organization I worked for was a big one, and we had an area wherein there were 300 associates working in that area, and it was essentially kind of a call center department. So what their job was customers are calling them and asking, this is wrong with my transaction, or this is wrong with my card, how can you help me? Stuff like that. Now there was a dispute between 2 associates because they were sitting next to each other. They were in the same department. They were sitting next to each other. They were on the same shift timings. And there was this one associate always trying to look inside the screen of the other associate. It was such a silly dispute, but it went so out of proportion because them both started screaming in the middle of, the work environment, that why are you looking at my screen? What is different in my screen? Or, why can't you just look at your computer? Why are you trying to talk? Like, why you have to check on what my work is. And it ended up into an actual physical fight. Both of them were terminated on the spot. But if this was resolved in the starting, so when we looked at it, we realized that this was actually an issue that was going on since the last 3 months. And this associate had given multiple complaints to his manager saying that I feel like he's, too invasive of my privacy. He's not letting me get my job done because he's giving me different comments saying that, why are you talking like that? Why are you saying this? You should say this instead to the customer, stuff like that. And it's bothering him. So as a manager, the simplest, I think the option would have been for that manager to just separate them and make them sit on one end of the bill, like one end of the, the room, right? Or change the shift timings. If this one's coming in the morning, just call the other one, probably in the afternoon, because we could change shift timings as well. There were so many things that as a people manager, that manager could do, but instead she chose to ignore all of the complaints and be like, you know what, probably you're overreacting. He's not looking at your screen. You're overreacting. He's not saying this. You're overreacting. He's not doing that. Because of ignorance on the manager's part, there were 2 associates who lost their job. And obviously there was a disciplinary action against the manager as well, because that associate said that he has proof. So he had email proof sending stuff to his manager saying, I have an issue. This is my problem. Please help me resolve it. And she kept ignoring that. So yeah, it's basically coming back to this is it's important that you monitor your associates and properly talk to them and communicate. And also, if they have an issue, you need to make sure that you adjust to their requirements. Every employee might have a different set of requirements. So if someone's sick, their requirement would be, I need more breaks in terms of, if it's a call center working organization, it's difficult for them to just randomly leave and take breaks, right? They're talking to customers. So, a person would be like, I'm a little old. I feel like I need to use the toilet way often. So this is one of an adjustment that you're making just for that associate. So as a manager, it's important for you to be so empathetic that you need to consider different employee issues into place and make adjustments accordingly. That's where ER comes into place, right? Good communication between your employees and your employer, or essentially your employees and your manager. So again, we have gone through all of that, how it's important to adapt in the organization to basically cater to your associates' needs so that you can reach the organization goals, right? And proper communication is so important as well. Then we're going to design a range of appropriate communication and consultant mechanisms to facilitate employee voice and levels of engagement. So basically, the most important task would be understanding employee voice. Yeah. As I mentioned in the previous example that I gave, listening to your associates is so important so that they can have a positive work environment. And, it also increases engagement because they are engaging with you more. If you're talking to one person and, for example, if someone shared with me and I am their manager that their mom is not doing that great, it takes me 1 second to go in the next day and ask, how's your mom doing today? Is she gotten better? It might not mean a lot to me, but to that associate, it would mean so much, because it would mean that, my manager actually cares about me, and she actually made an effort to come and ask me if, my mom's doing fine or not. And that would give them a sense of, it would just make them feel all the more comfortable to come to me and talk to me about any other issue going forward. That's how I increase engagement among associates, right? And managers. And also have a positive work environment then. This was just a personal issue, but in terms of employee voice, it can be, a new, fresh idea that they feel that, this is a very long process that we do. We can actually just narrow it down and make an Excel or track everything so that we don't have to run amongst each other that, oh, have you completed this, or have you done this, or have you done that? a proper, easily shared Excel with a tracking sheet is way more easier. This is one of an idea that an associate came up with. As a manager, I need to consider that idea and take that, if it can be taken on board or not. Maybe because of the organization's working style, that idea might not be taken onto board. But I need to make sure that I explain that to the associate well, that why is this idea not taken on board? Tell them that, oh, it's a very good idea. I wish, there was an other way around this. So I'm giving them an open platform to give me more suggestions in the future as well. And then explaining that why we can't put this into place, right? So, or maybe explaining why we will put this into place, and I would need their help to put that into place, right? That's how employee voice plays an important role. Then to key components of engagement. So there are different components of engagement, right? If there is proper employee engagement, there is going to be proper job satisfaction. Employees are going to be very motivated to come into work and get their tasks done. They would have a sense of, a commitment to the organization, because they're like, this organization actually cares about me. I want to do a better job. I want to make sure that I complete all of the goals and objectives and make sure that, we strive and do better. So engagement is a very important role that takes place over there, and helps to foster employee satisfaction, essentially. Then again, we've gone through this, so I'm just going to skim through it quicker this time. They have surveys and feedback platforms. Obviously, we can take employee surveys, we can take them digitally, we can have like a Google form that goes around, or we can actually have interviews with associates. Sorry. We can have interviews with associates talking about, some suggestions that they have on board. And yeah, that's basically, that'll make them feel that they've been heard, essentially. Then town halls, meetings, and on-hand sessions. So as I mentioned, what a town hall meeting is, the CEO is giving different updates. All-hand session would be, they have, they're talking about a specific problem, and everyone is putting their different suggestions in the team's chats and trying to, say that, this is how I feel you can take it up. This is how, I feel you can take it up. That just helps in proper communication. And employees feel that, this is an organization that hears us. In a small business organization, it might be like just a team's hurdle that you can be like, I feel that we are selling this goods, but we haven't been doing the marketing that well. How can we focus more on marketing so that, or, if, for example, if I'm going in a small business organization, my suggestions would be to use social media effectively. If, they're selling, I want to give an example. If they're selling chips, okay, very random example, I would say that, nowadays our customers are getting so health conscious. Maybe we can give healthy alternatives for our chips. So maybe we can come up with lentil chips instead of potato chips, and not just come up with that idea, put that into place, and also use social media correctly. In today's day and age, I feel that making use of, social media platforms is so important because it gives so much visibility to an organization. That's an idea or suggestion that I came up with in a small business organization, which essentially works traditionally, but because of my ideas, we're trying to move into a modern working environment. So yeah, that helps in employee engagement, because I might say, TikTok is the best app that we can use. Whereas someone in India would give me a suggestion saying that that wouldn't work for them. TikTok's banned in India. We might have to use Instagram as our main platform. So that's how engagement starts and different suggestions come on board. Then suggestion programs and idea box, as we spoke about this before. Any associate can come, put in their different suggestions, given new ideas. Christmas, want to celebrate Christmas, Eid, Diwali, or, you want to have a cleanup drive, or you want to donate to a specific organization or a children's organization. So, you can put it as a different idea that comes up. And why would that idea help is because if that idea is taken on board and goes along with it, as an associate, I would be so happy, and I would be like, oh, this is my idea. Like, this is actually falling into place. I had come up with an idea in my previous organization was, so in the UK, I was talking to Ishik about this. I mentioned, especially during the winter months, November, December, Jan, Feb, the sun sets by 3:30. Sometimes, 2:33, it's pitch dark as well. Like, it's 10:50 over here in the morning, and it feels like it's 6 p.m. in India. That's how it's feeling right now. So during our winter months, everything's dull and dark. Because of that, crime rates against women go way higher, right? And women feel more unsafe to get out. It's 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. and I'm coming back from work in the evening, and I feel unsafe because there's hardly any people on the road and it's pitch dark, right? It feels like it's 11 or 12 in the night. Anyways, so my little suggestion box, and my idea was, it wasn't a box, it was a form that we filled, that we should distribute safety keychains to women in the months of October, November. What safety keychains was that, I was like, we can come up with 200 safety keychains and distribute them in the office. If you pull the keychain, it makes a loud beeping sound and alerts your important contacts, right? And that keychain also has a little sharp object in it. So, in case someone tries to come and attack you, you can use that. It was such a small idea, and it came up with the simple fact that when I walk home, I am unsafe. So how can this little small thing make me feel 5% more safer, right? It's not going to obviously change it drastically, but in my head, I'm 5% more safer because I'm roaming around with that. So if in case anything goes wrong, I can just pull one string or like just press a little small button and I have help in the next 5 minutes. And that idea was taken on board, and there were like 300-400 keychains that were distributed to women across. So as an individual, that made me feel so powerful, because I was like, you know what, it came up from a little seed, basically from my suggestion that, I'm walking home, I'm scared, how can I make it different? So this is just one of an idea that engagement plays a very important role, right? I was more motivated to give more better ideas and do better in my job role as well. Then you have employee forums and employee focus groups. So what employee forums are is basically groups or councils of associates that, they can just come up and explain that, I have a concern, my manager has been treating me, differently. I feel that there's discrimination taking place because I'm an Indian and, someone's from Nigeria, they're treating them better than me. Just an example. Then focus groups are basically groups wherein you're talking about one specific thing. So you have one topic in mind, and that's the only thing that you're talking about. And it's your discretion. You can be a part of the focus group or you can leave the focus group whenever, but it just helps in communication. So for example, one of the focus groups can be the Israel and Palestine war, right? It can be a focus group having a discussion amongst associates that what they feel about the war. And just as a as an update, did you guys read about what the US did?
With Israel?
Yeah, the US.
Yeah, they sent some, I think so, battleships on on their west coast, I think.
Yeah, and also, do you know what happened in the UN meeting?
No, no idea.
Oh, so there was a meeting, I think it was a day or two ago, and UN as an organization can
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
war. So they have permanent members and they have non-permanent members. There are, I
Okay.
think, 7 or 8 permanent members. I'm not sure about the name of the number, but there was a law that was going to be passed, or basically, just a meeting that was happening wherein they said that UN has to take action. So as members of the UN, the countries can vote. So they can vote if they want this to happen, or they can say that, they can use your veto power and say that this will not happen. So there were 9 countries that actually voted for it, basically for UN to take charge and stop this war. The UK abstained from voting. So the UK said that I'm not going to be for or against it, because the UK is usually very democratic. It was not cool of them to do that, but they wanted to have, good relationships with everyone. That's why they just abstained from voting. But the US, being a permanent member, vetoed. What essentially vetoed means is they said no. So that's why the UN is not taking any action against the war, because of one country saying no. So there was this entire article that I was reading that everyone was saying, yeah, the greatest nation in the world, but you're essentially funding the war. And everyone's saying that this is actually an American war. This is not between Israel and Palestine, because the US is funding all of the arms and ammunitions. That's why they said that the UN should not take any action against the war, because, basically the US is getting profited, right? So yeah, read about it. It's very interesting. It is. So yeah, coming back to focus groups. So this is one of a conversation or a discussion that you can have amongst your associates, just to increase engagement. And it doesn't have to be about a specific, work topic. It can be literally about anything. Then online collaboration platforms and social entrants. So essentially, online collaboration, very straightforward. We know what this is: sharing ideas and information, having interactions amongst each other, and just giving different suggestions and coming up with new ideas. Whereas social entrants is basically, it can be a platform or a Facebook page or a community, basically coming up with, give different suggestions again, but is helping employee engagement. So on Teams, you can have these different pages, and you can be, a part of them. So, as a page, they're talking about, I don't know, the LGBTQ community, right? So that's one of the different pages on Teams, on the Teams channel that you have. Or you're talking about the environment. So that's how it is. We've spoken about this open door policy. Having an open door policy is basically being more accessible to your associates. Even leaders that are 2-3 levels high in the hierarchy, if they have an open door policy, it just gives a sense of comfort to the associates that, what, my voice is actually heard. So that helps in engagement. Manager and employee one-on-one meetings. So I feel this is so crucial, because as a people manager, if you're managing 10 people, it's important for you as a people manager to have a meeting with your associates, maybe, bi-weekly or weekly as well. Just asking them that, how do you feel about the roles that are, feel about the tasks that I've assigned to you? Do you think that you have too much on your plate? Do you think you need my help to complete a specific task? That's just one of an example of meetings between managers, so that they can build a sense of, trust. Promote trust and engagement. So that is really helpful. Then going on to tailoring mechanisms for organization culture. We've spoken about this. Every organization functions differently. They're gonna use or basically change the mechanism according to their value and culture of that specific organization. Then promoting flexibility. How giving your associates flexibility or helping with their flexible working requests, for example, is just going to foster a better work environment amongst your associates, and your employees are going to be more, more grateful for the organization to actually, care about them. Then confidential feedback channels. So yeah, this is important because, sometimes there is negative feedback that comes through the manager as well. And it's important for your managers to have that, confidentiality amongst you and them, because if, you're called out in front of your entire team, in front of 10 people, you're like, you know what, Arshi didn't do a great job. That's obviously gonna, demotivate me and be like, that's not cool. Like, if I didn't do a good job last week, probably you should have asked me what happened. You should have spoken to me. It's probably, someone in my family is not doing that great and I was distracted. That is just an example that I'm giving, that it's so important for managers to be, confidential, or for organizations to have confidentiality amongst your associates. Then anonymous surveys and reports. So how different, surveys and reports can help. Like I said, in one of the organizations I was working, we had these anonymous chats that came up. So probably I'm scared that my job is at stake if I say that, that's actually not cool for you to call associates 4 days a week. I'm a working mother. I cannot do this. But I feel that my job would be at stake if I directly put it. So I want to put it anonymously, right? So that helps in honest and actual feedback and suggestion. Then monitoring and evaluation, we went through this, how monitoring associates can help in continuous improvement. You can talk to them, help them out, tell them that, okay, if you need any, support from my end, how I can improve the way you work or your quality of work essentially, and adjust to your working style. And then tracking engagement matrices. So matrices, sorry. So how we can, see that if an associate who's working remotely or away from the office, how can we track that, are they actually engaging with the organization or not? So different, employee satisfaction scores and participation rate, like if, we're having a town hall, out of 2,000 of our associates, how many actually join the call and how many actually put in suggestions? So that's one of, a participation rate that you get. After the Teams call, you get like a report of how many people, joined, when they joined, what they put in, like in the Teams chat. So that helps in making, maybe 11 a.m. in the morning is not a correct time because most of our associates are very busy to getting their work done. Maybe 4 p.m. in the evening would be a better time for us to have these town halls. Yeah. So yeah, basically we went through all of these points and how all of that would help in open communication and increasing engagement. I am aware that the time is up. I'm just going to quickly skim through these few slides. We have a lot, but it's just going to get done quicker because we have gone through all of this. How can help, good communication help in employee morale and job satisfaction? We spoke about this. You listen to them, they're going to feel more satisfied. They're going to feel more, a sense of trust with their organization. Then how that can also increase employee engagement and commitment. Since they feel that the organization cares, they're going to put in more, in terms of how I would put in more in my job. I would be like, I need to work harder. I need to go towards the organization goals. I'm more engaged and committed. I would not be looking at different jobs because I'm like, I'm pretty happy at where I am. My suggestions are taken on board and I'm respected well. So because it's not always the pay that always matters, right? It's also how you're working and you feel when you enter your office. How can engagement impact productivity? If a properly engaged employee might, be more productive in terms of getting more tasks done because they just, they feel a sense of belongingness to the organization. And that will also help in helping innovation because an employee would feel that, my ideas were taken on board. Like I gave the example of the safety keychain that I mentioned. I was so happy that, they took my idea on board. I had so many more fresh ideas that I kept giving them. Again, how that can impact employee retention. So if I feel like, I'm valued and I have a sense of belongingness in my organization, I would want to enjoy and stay here, right? Why would I want to find a different job if I'm happy where I am? Obviously not stagnant, but I'm continuously growing and happy in my job role. And then how that will indirectly help the organization because a high turnover rate is going to mean more cost to the HR department in terms of hiring, because when you're hiring new people, there's a lot of money that breaks because when you don't have someone in that specific job role, you're essentially losing money, right? And also hiring someone new is a task on its own. Having interviews, your HR department is putting resources into place. So how retention helps in cost savings as well. Then how can good communication essentially or engagement help with the organization values as well? If there's good communication, the organization has open communication, then it's going to help in the culture wherein, everyone's quite satisfied and happy and not scared to give ideas out. and also would help to build a sense of trust and transparency. As I mentioned, if you have an open door policy, everything's so transparent, wherein my leader is sitting right here and doing his task, right? I'm like, you know what? I can actually see the back end part of how he works. That makes me feel so good, because like there's no difference between us. It's just him making more high level decisions compared to me. As I gave the example, how can conflict be resolved in the first go? The example of the call center, wherein, you know, in the first go, when the first complaint came, if the manager would have taken some action, it wouldn't have gone out of proportion. So the dispute wouldn't have, you know, gone out of proportion essentially. And collective problem solving. So if there's an organization and, you know, there's a entire like the entire department has an issue, so how can we solve that issue together collectively, and, you know, come in with different departments that, you know, everyone feels that we don't have proper communication, we're just having communication through a, you know, a screen. We sit beside each other, but we're still having meetings on a Teams call. Why? So as an entire organization or collectively, we can be like, no, let's move to having face-to-face meetings more. Yeah, COVID had started Teams meetings, but let's move on to how we can talk and engage better. That's just one of an example, essentially. Then how the engagement helps to respond to employee needs. So again, employee, you know, actively they make different changes and suggestions, how that can cater to your associates' needs and feedback, essentially. And that would help in having a positive impact on the reputation. So if I have worked for an organization previously and I'm done and I got a new offer from a new organization, maybe as a feedback on LinkedIn, I'll be like, I had the best time and I would suggest this organization to anyone who wants to join. That is basically a positive impact and the reputation of the company as well, right? Why do people want to work for Google and Apple? Because they have a good reputation of taking care of their associates. So yeah, how all of these different ways can help a positive outcome for the employees and the organization, essentially. So it's important to, you know, listen to your employees. It's important to have proper communications. It's important to resolve an issue when it starts in the beginning, so it's not got out of proportion. It's important to align with the organization's values and, you know, different working style, but keep your employees in check, keep your employees in mind as well by making decisions. So this is just a few of the things that we went through in this learning outcome. This was the last slide. Do you have any other doubts, guys?
No.
No problem at
No.
all. No problem. I hope everything was clear and, you know, pretty straightforward. I did speak a lot, you know, because I was giving different examples. Sorry about that. But I just feel it's easier for you all to understand when, you know, I give an actual real life example. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I will meet you guys next week as well. Nandesh, just a quick one for you. I spoke to Ishika about this yesterday. So there's a meeting which is after next week, the week later, for assignment discussion. Are you happy to have that lecture move to next week instead? So we can have 2 lectures on a Sunday or 2 lectures on a Saturday instead?
Yeah, no problem for me.
So we'll get done with this unit next week itself instead of dragging it on to the later week.
Yeah, okay.
All right, perfect. So I will ask Jill to schedule that accordingly, and she might send a new link for that, yeah?
Okay.
No problem, guys. See you next week. Have a nice day. Take care. Bye.
Bye.